Hey, so guys, Khan here. So we've gotten the patch notes for the 0.20 update for Path of Exile 2 coming up tomorrow. And I wanted to talk about everything that had to do with warrior and maces general and melee. Because I think I've seen a lot of things that are misunderstood or some misconceptions about the consequences the patch will have on that. So let's go get into it. Like, well, the first thing that's happening is that life overall is just getting nerfed. So we've lost the Invictus armor. Now does cannot roll maximum life anymore, so we lost maximum life from here. Mahu's Athel also got nerfed if you use that for life. Now it's only 100% increase effect instead of 600, up to 600. Personally, I did not use that shield because I prefer to have more block chance, because block is really good. Yeah, that is another source where you could get a lot of life if you wanted to. And we also lost the life rolls from against the Darkness Jewel. So overall, we've lost a decent chunk of life. Also, the reward from Candlemas in Act 4 went down from like 8% maximum life to 5%, I believe. So there's another bit of life lost there. So overall, endgame, you'd probably lose around 1000, maybe a bit more HP on your endgame builds, which is a pretty good amount that we lose. But then again, I think that's fine. Like, it depends how hard I want the game to be, how I want defenses to look like. In this patch, personally, I don't agree with that change because I think defenses are actually pretty bad in general in PvE2, and just making life builds even worse is like, I don't really see the idea behind it, especially when under shield builds will still be able to get as high pulls as they used to, outside of obviously Green Freeze that's been removed. But you can still get like pretty high pulls, and monks to get to meditate, etc, etc. Either way, so the first thing is like life gets nerfed. There's some stuff changed about stuns that's relevant for warrior. The stun thresholds for monsters have just higher stun threshold in general. Enemies for stun is a bit easier from magic monsters and rare and uniques, going from 60, 70, and 80% to 50, 60, and 70%. So that'll make stuff like Bone Shadow a lot easier to use, because you'll be able to just stay as low damage and stuff build up as possible, and until you encounter the problem where you don't have enough, then you can just get more damage, get more stun build up. But that will help a lot with making Bone Shadow a lot more smooth to play. Another notable change is fully broken armor. So now what fully broken armor does is that it makes you, once you're fully broken, you take 20% increased physical damage from hits. Well, monsters take 20% increased physical damage for hits, and that will also apply to players. So if your armor gets broken fully, you take 20% increased physical damage. It makes armor indirectly better, because the more armor you have, the harder it is for monsters to fully break your armor, and the harder it is for monsters to be able to apply that debuff that will make you take 20% increased damage from physical hits. Now, obviously, if you're already investing into armor, you will still suffer more from a build that has no investment in armor and has only armor or evasion. But at the very least, now it means that the armor break mod will also affect characters that don't have armor, because currently the way it works is if you're broken armor, you just have 0 armor. But if you played an evasion or energy shield character, you didn't care about having 0 armor. You already had 0 armor. So that is a buff to armor, pretty much indirectly. And also obviously a buff to all the warrior builds that will almost always want to break armor. Another buff for warrior is ancestrally boosted slams. Now have 30% more damage and 20% more AoE instead of 20% more damage and 20% more AoE. So that is pretty nice because it makes Fist of War better support, and also it buffs Titan Ascendancy node here that gives us ancestral empowerment, which makes every second slam skill be ancestrally boosted. Like before, it was pretty bad because it was 20% each, right? So you would get 10 on average, it's 10% more damage, which is pretty low. But now that it's 30%, that makes the node give you 15% more damage on average, and it's more in line with the other ascendancy nodes we have in the game. So this is definitely something that you could consider on something like on Earthshatter, for example. That would be an option. That would be a decent amount of damage. So that is a decent buff. I think now that this makes Ancestral Empowerment an option. And yeah, so that's pretty much all there is to say to it, and I will just take this segue to talk about Titan buffs. So like, Titan got buffed in a couple of ways. So the Surprising Strength notable, Ascendancy notable, now gives 50% more damage instead of 40%. So that's a nice little increase here. And the Earthbreaker node gives 25% chance to aftershock instead of 20%. Again, that's nice. More consistent aftershocks. That means that this node, for example, for any slams will be 25% more damage. This one will be 15% on average. And then you have hulking form, which can go anywhere from 25 to 30% more damage. So overall, Titan just gaining more damage, you know, a lot of damage now on the Titan ascendancy, a ton of it actually. And the thing to know too with surprising strength is that it kind of goes hand in hand with the change to Hammer of the Gods, which I want to talk about now. Because I've seen a lot of people say that, oh, Hammer of the Gods got nerfed, oh, it's dead, oh, warrior nerfs, whatever. This change here, I will read it first, but Hammer of the Gods now no longer has a cooldown, but it requires 20 glory to use. And glory basically gets built up when you heavy stun enemies, and the amount of glory you gain is based on the monster power. White monsters have 1 power, magic monsters have 2 power, rare monsters have 5 power, and unique monsters, bosses, etc., they have 20 power. So if you stun a boss or a unique monster, you will get enough glory to use Hammer of the Gods. Now, there's 2 questions about this change, about how glory works. Does it have an internal cooldown? Meaning that if, for example, if I heavy stun a pack of 20 white monsters, do I get 20 glory or do I just get 1? We don't know that. The second thing is, does glory decay over time? Do you lose your glory if you do not gain glory recently or do not use your Hammer of the Gods? My expectation is that there's going to be no internal cooldown and it's not going to decay. And hopefully it works this way, and if it works this way, this means that you'll probably be able to use Hammer of the Gods every second monster pack in a map. Every second, third monster pack you can use Hammer of the Gods. That will also mean that once you get to a map boss, you will already have 20 glory saved up. Which means you get to the map boss, you drop a hammer, most likely gets heavy stun, which will give you 20 glory, so you can use another Hammer of the Gods right behind it. Technically, if this works this way, in terms of how no internal cooldown and no glory decay, this is just straight up a buff. I know most people did not play around heavy stuns around Hammer of the Gods, which was wrong. If you wanted to play Hammer of the Gods optimally, the best way was always to heavy stun the boss first, and then you empower the Hammer of the Gods with all your warcries, with your 2 warcries, and then you drop it. And that's where you do way more damage. I would say that a Hammer of the Gods against a heavy stun target is probably about triple the amount of damage you do versus a Hammer of the Gods with no setup at all. So this is not a nerf. This is how you should actually play the skill. So this is not a nerf. I think this is actually a good change. I prefer it like this. Obviously, that means that against pinnacle bosses, you will most likely only get 1 Hammer of the Gods unless they changed something about the stun build-up on pinnacles, which is, it is pretty difficult to stun, for example, a tier 4 pinnacle boss. And once you do, that's pretty much all you get. This might change, I don't know. Hopefully it does, but even if it doesn't, then you get 1 hammer. And because of that, I don't expect the numbers on Hammer of the Gods to go down too much, because, a reminder, all the skill changes listed here, we do not have all the info, we don't have the new numbers on the gem, how they scale with levels, all these things are just not known. So it could very well be that Hammer of the Gods now does, like, I don't know, 400% weapon damage. Obviously that's not gonna be the case. It's possible, right? So we don't know for sure. But I'm expecting that with this, basically limiting your Hammer of the Gods to once per pinnacle boss, that the numbers should not go down too much. I'm expecting maybe, I don't know, maybe 40% less damage overall on Hammer of the Gods, possibly. That's like the lowest I could see it go. But even in that case, you will still have enough damage with Hammer of the Gods, assuming you have the same character from last patch, or well, the current patch. It will still do enough damage for you to do a good chunk of damage with that, even on pinnacles. So that is not enough, that is actually completely fine. Now, the other changes was, we just talked about Titan, right? So we can go look at Warbringer real quick, because there's been a bunch of changes here. So the War Colors Below Ascendancy passive now causes warcries to explode corpses, instead of giving you corpse in your presence explode when you warcry. And they notify that it allows for warcry AoE to scale corpse explosion radius. And I think, well, I haven't played Warbringer, so I do not know that for sure, but from the wording, the previous wording and the current wording, this would make me think that it did not, the old corpse explosion did not scale with your damage scaling. And the new wording 100% suggests that you will actually get your damage scaling on that corpse explosion. Like, I might be wrong. If you know the answer to that, please let me know. I do not know how it goes, don't quote me on that one, but I mean, this is possible. Total Charm again got buffed from 35% as block chance to 25%, that is what gives you the ability to block everything. That's really good, because I make it easier to cap your block chance on on Warbringer. Encasing Jade, I think the rework is really nice. It consumes all Jade to grant you guard, so you don't have to be immobile when you use it. So basically it gives you Molten Shell. I am expecting maybe that the value of the guard at full Jade stack could be like your entire life full. Could be even half, and even if it's half, like it's still okay, right? But I'm expecting it to be maybe like your entire life bar at full stacks, and that would be really, really nice. That would be a really good note to take for hardcore whenever, you know, use whenever you want to tank a slam. If you're in trouble, just use it. And there's not gonna be any weird downside where you have to stand still and just eat everything. The other nodes, though, I cannot say too much about those. I haven't really used those, and yeah, these I don't care too much about. I can't really give you too much info on this or insight. The other thing is the mana costs. So the mana cost of melee attacks and warcries marks have all been reduced, most notably at higher gem levels. Now that is a pretty decent, that is a pretty big deal depending on the values on this. From what I've understood, it's like maybe 30% less cost on everything from levels. And that is a pretty big deal because if your mana costs are more affordable, then you can scale your gem levels better, and that means more damage. So this is pretty much a damage buff on every melee attacks, well, every attacks. We'd have to see like how this plays out, like how what the numbers actually look like. But this is a good step, at least. You'll make every step of the game just feel better to play, and in the end game you'll be able to get more damage from your items because you can scale gem levels more efficiently, more realistically. So that's a really good change. Again, warrior W here. Next thing is Heralds. So Herald of Ash has a slightly bigger radius, well 20% bigger radius. That's nice, right? And change the quality to something useful. But again, like Herald of Ash is not very good, but you will still use it if you're not using. You will still use it because it helps smooth out the clear a little bit. It's not really a big deal. I don't think it's changed as much. Like Herald of Ash is still gonna be kind of meh. But the other thing about Heralds that they did is that the on-kill effects of Herald skills can no longer trigger from skills caused by Herald skills. So this will pretty much prevent Herald of Ice kills from ever, well, Herald of Ice or any other Herald pretty much who ever proc other Heralds on kill effects, which means you cannot make them chain anymore. That being said, there's a couple ways to still do it. I am not gonna go into detail about that, but Herald of Ice chaining will still be possible. Next patch, I believe, I will have to do it myself and make sure that everything works properly as expected, because again, it is possible that they do something like reduce the damage of the heralds themselves to something completely unplayable, and then yeah, it is possible they can technically do that. But like right now, mechanically, assuming that the numbers are reasonable and they still do like okay damage, it will still be possible. And because you know, it doesn't matter if you chain your heralds if they don't do any damage, don't kill anything, right? So we'll have to see, but it is possible. I will get back on you. I'll get back to you about this after launch when I actually get to enact the plan to circumvent this nerf here, which I think will be. I think I'm relatively confident it will be doable. Now, another change is for Leap Slam, which is not a big deal, but Leap Slam right now has a more stun build up, a lot more, and that means that it could technically make it harder for you to prime targets for stun for Bone Shatter. But again, the monsters in the end game have about like double the amount of stun threshold, so it should not have too much of an impact on that, and it is just gonna allow you to use Leap Slam to try to heavy stun. Maybe it will make Leap Slam something viable in terms of trying to heavy stunning pinnacles, for example. I don't know, I doubt it, but I mean, you'll have to see. Now, Perfect Strike also has a few changes, so it no longer ignites. It has less speed, from 45 to 35. And quality now gives ignite chance instead of magnitude of ignite. And also, Perfect Strike also now deals damage in a wider area to the player, making it less likely to miss enemies standing next to the player. That is a pretty big deal, because it's very, very common to just miss, because you get slightly pushed by a boss, and suddenly or it moves slightly, and then your Perfect Strike whiffs because you're melee range. Now the rest, so no longer always ignites is pretty much irrelevant, in my opinion, because you will just ignite anyway. Like, Perfect Strike, depending on the numbers, will still hit hard enough for you to very consistently ignite. That is not a problem. And then the speed, obviously, it's slight inconvenience, but that just means that while leveling, you should always use martial tempo on your Perfect Strike for it to feel good. And then in the end game, once you have a weapon with attack speed and you have skill speed and attack speed on your tree, you will just have enough speed regardless, so it's not gonna feel that bad. It's still gonna be fast enough. Another thing about Perfect Strike is window of opportunity that got nerfed from 50 to 35%, and the shorter perfect timing window going from 25% shorter to 35% shorter. So you'll make it a bit harder to hit. You're also gonna get less damage. So I mean, I think that support is like insanely good anyway, and Perfect Strike's damage is very good. Again, all this depends on the gem numbers. We can't know for sure, but for now, like Perfect Strike, the current changes don't look too crazy. Like it's fine. It still looks fine, so I would not worry too much about this. Seismic Cry now no longer has increased warcry speed. I believe this is only this is not the quality. You will still get the 40% quality from speed from quality, so that should be fine. Not a big deal. It's gonna be slightly annoying, but I mean, yeah. Stampede. Now, Stampede got nerfed. I'm not sure why, but that just means that on Titan right now, with all the changes to Titan and this, you will only get 92% chance to Aftershock on your Stampede versus 97. Again, it's like a slightly inconsequential nerf, but also necessary nerf. I'm not sure why. They just don't want you to have 100% chance to Aftershock, I guess, but I mean, whatever. Now, volcanic fissure also got a change. I think this is just mostly for GPU stuff, basically. It's just for performances issues that you would cause, because you could have like an absurd amount of fissures on the ground that all trigger from all your aftershocks, and it was kind of a problem. The problem is, like, when I tested that skill, multiple fissures could not hit the same monster twice from like the same attack, the same set of fissures. So it made it like pretty bad. So I don't think it's gonna affect the build's performance that much outside of clear. For clear, it will be noticeable, but yeah. The new thing with shields also that will be probably see some use is shield bash. So raising race shield immediately after blocking skill now performs a shield bash that damages and stuns enemies in front of you, and also dazes them if you're using a tower shield. So I think this is pretty nice. We'll definitely see some use. For example, say you are in a ritual getting swarmed by 70 monsters, wasted monsters that you cannot fight back because if you try to swing, you just get stunned or whatever. Well, now you have an option to get out of situations like this, and you just raise your shield. You just tap your raise shield to block anything, and then counter attack with the bash. The question now is like, how big is going to be the AoE? Is it a heavy stun? Is it a light stun? I'm not sure exactly. We'll have to see, but this looks like this could have some potential to see use in gameplay, in volume mapping. Also, worth noting, you can also support it with stuff, so you could make it like May MP and whatever. I'm not sure exactly. Would have to see exactly what it does. Maybe it does even good damage, because it does damage. It's possible that it might do some actually relevant damage, but we'll have to wait and see. Again, we don't have all the info. Another good thing for warriors in general is the runes now have 3 tiers. So this means that you can get iron runes. So like we have the normal iron runes currently that give like 20% physical damage. And you have 3 additional tiers. So I don't know, maybe it's going to go from 20 to 30 to 40, maybe it's 20 to 25 to 30, I don't know, whichever it is. It is still going to be just, I'm going to gain power from that. Our weapons will be better. In the same vein, we have now recombinators in the game, which means it will be a lot easier to make good weapons that have all the mods we need, which usually you want some fizz mods, you want attack speed, you want level 2 melee skills, maybe you want mana leash. You will be able to try to obtain these things in a much more reasonable way than we had before. And that will mean that your average weapon on your warriors will be a lot better than they were in last patch. So that is a pretty significant damage gain in that regard. So even if the gems get nerfed a decent amount, we will still gain that power back from the crafting and the additional runes that we get. And lastly, there is also a couple things that will end up being buffs for us, and that is some of the skills we have that we're not scaling with AoE properly. So Impact Shockwave, for example, got its radius nerfed from 2 meters to 1.8, but there was a bug that made apparently Impact Shockwave was not scaling with area modifiers. So I'm not sure if that means AoE damage and actual AoE, probably like all of them. I'm assuming that it just didn't have the AoE tag properly working. So now you'll be able to scale the AoE damage and the AoE coverage of Impact Shockwave a lot better. So again, that's relevant for Mace Strike if you're playing that, or Bone Shatter, which means it's gonna result in like just more damage, more AoE overall. And same thing with aftershocks, that apparently they just did not have AoE scaling also working with this specific aftershocks. So again, some of the aftershocks were not scaling properly, damage and AoE wise. I guess that will be that is fixed. So that's again another thing that's changing for the better for warriors. So overall, I would say that warrior is at least from what we see now from these patch notes, warrior is actually getting out in a pretty good shape here. Like decent amount of nice quality of life change. Just they did nerf like AoE though. Like AoE overall is gonna be nerfed, I believe. Not by much. Like for example, magnified effect did go down from like 40% more AoE to 30% more, and a higher cost multiplier. That being said, like we had so much AoE on warrior, I think it was gonna be fine. Obviously, if you're playing a Smith of Kitava, then you lose even more. So this might be relatively noticeable on going from Titan to Smith of Kitava, for example. But yeah, having the option to play Smith of Kitava also is also a pretty good, pretty big thing for warrior, because Smith of Kitava has insanely good league start power, because you have so little gear requirements to play that class. You have resist fixed, you have so much defense from the ascendancy. Obviously, you're not gonna have any damage, but as we've seen, we're getting a lot of options to get better weapons with runes, with recombinators, and various buffs from maybe less powerful skills that we have that are probably gonna get brought up again. Sadly, all these things we cannot know. Okay, so basically TLDR, I would say that the warrior is getting out ahead of this patch notes. Obviously, we're still missing all the skill-specific changes in terms of numbers on the gems, how they scale with levels, etc., etc. But overall, we gain a new ascendancy that is very powerful with very strong start of the league. Very little gear requirements. I know there's been some life nerfs, but like for example, Invictus being nerfed the way it is right now is just a win for Smith of Kitava, for example, where you do not need the body armor. So that just increases the value of that ascendancy even further. And then yeah, obviously it doesn't have damage, but all that damage can be, like I said, we're gonna gain a lot of the damage back from just having better runes, better weapons in general, just better gear in general, because recombinators are in the game. And armor break buffs, there's some probably some skills are gonna be improved that are from the ones that are not as good. We'll have to see though. I am pretty confident that starting warrior will be a good choice, especially on Smith of Kitava. So people that were worried, like, oh, warrior's getting nerfed. No, it's not getting nerfed. I think warrior is in a pretty good state right now, especially with how much everything else that was overpowered in the game got brought down. So yeah, I will be playing Smith of Kitava, like I said. Maybe mace, maybe spear. That is another thing. You can play anything, right? Spear, mace, crossbows, I think will also pretty big winner that you can also play on warrior, whether on Smith or Titan, both can do it. And yeah, I will see you guys on league start. If you have any questions, feel free to ask and answer. Yeah, see you guys later. Have a good one.